Joe asks a really simple question. What value, if any, do you see in windmills for mobility, anaconda strength, or otherwise? So what is the value of windmills? So the way I teach it at CERTS, and I think it should kind of be the way you teach it, is the first thing I teach is, and we do it quite safely. We start with the kneeling windmill family, and you can see that in some of the other videos here on YouTube. But I really try to teach the idea of hinging and then winding, and then I have a phrase I use when we're bringing the load, unloading. I say unwind and unhinge, and that brings you back up. Well, if done correctly, where you have the weight, it could be a kettlebell, a dumbbell, a barbell, your best friend. I like the idea of everything being stacked up very nicely. I like the idea of the spine rotating appropriately all the way down. And I always describe it at workshops as like a plane, I think it's called a barrel roll. So you got a plane flying like this, and then it turns over itself. I like to see the spine, just every disc turn a little bit all the way down, kind of in an even, nice way. Very often when someone says, my back's been hurting, when they just even get into a windmill position without weight, all of a sudden as they get there, you'll notice that there's a whole area that isn't moving at all. And very often that's the area that's got all the tension, the pain, the whatever causes backs not to move. Inflammation, I guess, would be another one. So do I see it as a good exercise for mobility? Oh yeah, I think there's real value if you need stable shoulders. And I know this, that if you're doing the windmill and there is an issue from, and I got to tell you, I guess it goes all the way to the hand, but if you have a wrist injury, elbow issue, a shoulder issue, it's gonna be real hard. Any T-spine, thoracic spine mobility issues, mid-back, lower back, even into the hip, it's going to expose you right there. So there is a chance you can do a test windmill and say, I can feel that. That's where you want a foam roll. Maybe that's where you get the massage. That's where you get the heat, whatever magic you do. One other thing, before I move on to this next point, Joe, but I'm a real believer that if you can windmill in one direction and you look terrible in the other, that to me is almost something I would want to say, okay, let's stop before we do anything and let's see what's going on here. Because when you have asymmetrical mobility in a movement like the windmill, I just see that as a flashing red light. There's an issue we should talk about. Does it build anaconda strength? Does it build that tight core? There are some ways I think you can do a better job with it. And this is where generally people, when they do windmills, load the high hand. But one thing, we're starting to move into that older exercise called the two hands anyhow. But with the bottom hand, if you slide down to the ground in that position and pick up, I think that's a better anaconda strength exercise because the load's down here. And I would say you have a light load. Let's say 10 kilos here, 22 pounds here, and the bottom load be 32, 70 pounds on load. So this is holding me in place. I'm making sure I have my vertical, everything's straight, everything's aligned. I've got that nice rotation through my spine. And then when I pick up that weight from the floor, kettlebells are great for this. I slide my hand inside that front leg, grab the kettlebell, eyes are still up there, and then squeeze it up. I think that has some great value for anaconda strength. Though honestly, that's a lot of work. It's probably easier just to do suitcase carries and waiter walks, but it's a good question. I think kettlebell windmills, done correctly, are a nice little way to get a free whole body diagnostic. In the same way that, doing a Turkish get-up with a reasonable weight, let's say you do just one left, one right every day for a couple of weeks, you really can get a lot of feedback by just how you move because there's there's so many level changes going up and coming down. You really get some insights. Maybe that right knee is barking at you today. Maybe your left shoulder needs a little bit more love. And I feel like the windmill and the Turkish get-up are pretty cheap diagnostics for how your engine is doing. Sadly, we don't have those nice little things that my car has, where it flashes a little light at you when your tire pressure is low or something's happening. We humans have to kind of do a little bit more work. So, good question. And thank you, Joe.